What's up, folks? This is Acid Roots Wired. So I'm doing a collaboration video with Jackal talking about basically top 5 video games that we feel like need some remakes. So yeah, obviously some of these games are 20 years, 15 years, something like that, more old, and I kind of feel like I would like to see a revamp of several of these to kind of get them in motion and hopefully have the same kind of enjoyment that I had out of them back in the day. But okay, so number 5, I'll go ahead and say is Max Payne for the PlayStation 2. Also for the Xbox. But this is a game, like the Max Payne series just kind of disappeared. It had a movie, Ludacris was in that, and other folks like that. But I mean, really, I felt like Rockstar, the developer of Grand Theft Auto, kind of pushed this series to the side just too quickly. I know that there was at least a Max Payne 2, and I want to say that that came out for the PlayStation 2 also, but I'm not quite as sure as to what happened to the series. There might have been a Max Payne 3. I'm not really sure, but regardless of that, it's been 20 years. That also came out in 2001 along with Grand Theft Auto 3. So it's just kind of, I feel as if these sorts of games need to kind of make a resurgence. And that's definitely the thing about it. It was fun. It was simple to play. It was easy. I had fun with it. The way that the game was played was addictive. There were plenty of things about it. It was basically just like an easy romp. I mean, it wasn't just a free roaming game that kind of had where you had to figure everything out on your own. There were segments and they storied them well, and I think that's the sort of video game that like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X needs. If there was a game like Max Payne for the PlayStation 5, I would have to say that would heighten the chances of me picking up one of these new machines. It definitely, because this was one of the better games for the PlayStation 2, definitely. But number 4, Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. This is another series that was for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Might have been for the PC also. But this is a racing game, and, once again, these guys, they did a real great job with handling this. It felt just kind of like a racing game and a street racing game with like a story mode and stuff. It was a lot of fun. You could totally trick out these cars. Felt like kind of a video game version of like Exhibit's Pimp My Ride Show and that type stuff. It was a lot of fun doing that sort of thing. It had a pretty stellar soundtrack for 2005. It was a lot of fun hearing songs like How We Do by like The Game and songs by Twista and some of those folks and that sort of stuff. I like the general appeal of it. I know that they at least did like a Midnight Club 4, but this is another series that just kind of vanished. And really, I don't know what Rockstar's kind of been up to. I mean, they did like Red Dead Redemption and that sort of stuff, but they just haven't really done these types of games in a while. And I felt like when they were doing the PS2 stuff, they really shined through, and they had like so many games that just easily probably made the millions, and they were probably living pretty grand back in the day just with mojitos and stuff. But now it just feels like the only things they work on is probably just Grand Theft Auto, which the game in itself probably takes like 6, 7, 8 years to make just because they're so huge. I mean, that's just the typical stuff. It's just like a typical 3D game where you can do everything, so they have to do it that way. But yeah, Midnight Club was essentially the racing game and vehicle version of Grand Theft Auto, just with an emphasis on getting first place in the races and kind of having a pseudo storyline where you rise to the top and become like an urban legend and stuff. So that's pretty dope. Number 3, Number 3 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, I haven't played this game, but I definitely would like to. I mean, I kind of feel like the concept behind it, I've looked around, and it's a pretty expensive game. I mean, some folks are trying to sell it for like 500, and some cases more than that, 500 bones, $500, more than that. So honestly, this is a coveted game, And I definitely feel like it could use a revision just because Castlevania is such a good series. I definitely like the ones for like the old Nintendo machines, but I feel like the PlayStation had a really good version of that that always looked interesting. And I kind of felt like, it's something that if you don't want to spend 500 or $1,000 to get this game, having like a revision of that, and obviously, keep it two-dimensional and stuff, but just the concept of trying to say updated whatever they have to do with it, as long as it's the same way that it would have played on the PlayStation 1, I would say that that's outstanding. It just needs to happen because Castlevania is a good series. It's a real creepy and kind of disturbing series. That type stuff has Dracula and those type villains, mummies, that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of fun seeing the sort of stuff that they could do. And that's the kind of game that like things need right now. They need like distinction, just the general creepiness. Horror needs to make a comeback into video games, basically. All right, number two. Number two would be Tekken 3 / Tekken 4. I feel like either way, you look at it, Tekken 3 for the PS1 or Tekken 4 for the PS2, both of these games were outstanding, and they definitely need a revamp. I mean, I feel like, yeah, you can say just go get Tekken 6 or Tekken 7 or whichever one they're on, but the way that these stages were, I don't want, like, a remake in the sense of, like, remodeling these stages and them losing their appeal, but just take the way they looked back in 1999 and 2000 and stuff, 2001, and kind of update it. That's just like the whole thing. Just make it an update, include like some characters that would be a perfect fit, have like bonus segments in the storyline, a more adapted story mode, just something that kind of makes it feel more like a more ambient kind of fighting game. I just would have to say I'd like the approach to that. I definitely would like to see some new characters, that type stuff. Maybe have like some, like clips in between the fights that kind of advance the storyline more so than just going on to fight each next fighter. Kind of having like a script that kind of ties in. I think they could do that with the PS5 and stuff, where like Jin and some of those characters could have something to say, and there would be backdrop as to fighting some of those characters that you got to. I mean, I think that they could probably do that stuff. And fighting games, I like fighting games quite a bit, but the problem with fighting games is they're just very sparse with like any sort of plot. Like I like the Street Fighter series, but it doesn't have any sort of storyline to kind of motivate you to keep playing. And I think that's something that needs to start to happen. I mean, I haven't played every installment of Tekken. Maybe they have done that, but it's something when they remake Tekken 3 or 4, they should try doing. All right, number one. And this, I would have to say about this, it's a personal one that I like. I need to mess with this series more, but Driver 1 for the PlayStation 1. Now, this is a series that has kind of disappeared. I know that they at least got to Driver 3 for the PS2, but this was kind of like Grand Theft Auto before Grand Theft Auto really took off. And I felt like, I watched a playthrough of this on the internet, and basically the thing about it, there's like this initial thing where you have to prove to like your employer that you can actually drive, so you have to do a bunch of stuff. I would like in the remake if they didn't have that be as difficult, where it's kind of easier to kind of get to like the meat of the game and actually get started with the missions. But I feel like the modes in that, the updated missions, the updated, visuals and stuff and that sort of thing, maybe some bonus stuff, more kind of scripted. I mean, I really feel like if they were to remake this game, it would probably come off as just exactly like a carbon copy of Grand Theft Auto. But the thing about it is, it did come out before that. So it's this kind of thing. I think it would be like a rival to it, and they could probably develop this series and just have like a video game series that's like Grand Theft Auto that is only about being in a vehicle. And it was pretty cool that they tried doing that way back on the PlayStation 1. But I definitely feel like to remake that, add some bonus stuff, some better cutscenes, there's plenty of things that they could go on to do with it. I think it would be a perfect fit just to have like some extra oomph to kind of have that kind of get started. But yeah, I would just have to say, I mean, I followed through with the game, but because it was for the PlayStation 1, it was limited because that was, of course, back in the 90s. But yeah, there's just plenty of stuff. So there you have it. 5 games that I think could be revamped, remade, and, just totally have far better execution and work. So there you go.
What's up, YouTube? It's Jackal Goldkick, and I'm here with Acid Roots Wired, and we're going to be doing a video collaboration talking about 5 video games that we want to see get remakes. Now, what we basically mean is a game getting a up from the ground, complete overhaul remake. Pretty much what they did for Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 2, where they got brand new versions and they got remade from the ground up. That's pretty much what we mean. So yeah, let's do this. So, my number 5 choice is going to be Resident Evil 5. Now, back in the day, I did like Resident Evil 5 and I did enjoy this game, but these days, this game just doesn't hold up for me and I don't really care for Resident Evil 5 anymore. I feel like the game it really isn't fun to play. It has a bad inventory system. The forced co-op AI partner for like a horror type game I don't care for. I don't like the setting that much. Setting it at daytime mostly instead of nighttime was a mistake. And, Resident Evil 4 was such a good game and it was one of my favorites. And I feel like Resident Evil 5 was just a really bad follow-up to RE4. And, a sequel is supposed to do what the predecessor did and be better and build upon it. And I feel like this didn't do that. And I think Resident Evil 5, I think it would be really cool to see this game get a remake because they could actually make this the follow-up to Resident Evil 4 it should have been and actually make it good, And I would love to see it happen. Have Shinji Mikami involved, the one who made Resident Evil 4, because he wasn't involved with this game, or the other ones, the later ones. And it'd be cool to see them remake Resident Evil 5, get Shinji Mikami to direct it and make it more like RE4. Give it much more of a better atmosphere. If it takes setting it at night, do it. Give it much more of a memorable soundtrack where there's a lot more horror to it, much like RE4. Have the inventory from RE4 instead of the one they did for 5. Make it single player, don't do the co-op AI thing. And, just make it have more of the magic that 4 had and the cool pacing it did. It maybe even introduce some new ideas. And if they did that for a remake of this game, you would have a great follow-up to RE4. And take lessons from Dead Space and Evil Within. I'm personally not a fan of Dead Space, but Dead Space and Evil Within were good follow-ups in a good way that they were good in the sense that they did a good job at evolving the RE4 formula, and they did that better than Resident Evil 5 did, unfortunately. And some of the original stuff they shown for Resident Evil 5 looked pretty cool. Like originally, Resident Evil 5 was just going to be Chris by himself in Africa, and they added co-op and Sheva because there was stupid backlash that Resident Evil 5 was racist because Chris is a white guy shooting black people in Africa. It was a stupid controversy, but I think that's what forced co-op in there and them to put Sheva in there. But the original version looked cool. It was Chris by himself in Africa. It looked a lot better than what we got. I would have preferred that. Instead of just the co-op thing. I really don't like that they did the co-op thing because with a survival horror game and an action horror type game, I think isolation and being by yourself works better than just having someone constantly with you. So that looked better. Some more stuff from the original RE5 concept art I've seen. Originally there was going to be zombies in the game, but they cut those, unfortunately. Chris's original design, in my opinion, looked much better. He didn't look roided out. He looked naturally muscular, and I liked that a lot more. His original design, I think, was better. One of the mechanics that was supposed to be in the original version of Resident Evil 5 was this mechanic where if you're out in the heat or the sun for too long, it could damage you or something. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, my number 5 choice is Resident Evil 5. Would like to see this get a remake. I think they could make a bad game and remake it into an actual good game, surpass Resident Evil 4, and keep the magic of Resident Evil 4 and built on what made that game so good, because this was disappointing and this just wasn't a good follow-up to 4. Get Shinji Mikami involved, remake Resident Evil 5, and make it more like RE4, with RE4's inventory, how RE4 would get pacing, the horror tone, the really memorable atmosphere, have more nighttime settings, have it with Chris by himself, incorporate a lot of those ideas they originally had, like the sun time damaging you, there was going to be zombies, include that, have it be isolated, RE4 inventory, have Shinji Mikami involved to direct and produce a remake of Resident Evil 5, and just whatever they did with RE4 to make it so good and where it succeeded so well, do that, but with a remake of Resident Evil 5. I would love to see that. I really would love to see that. And I think it would be cool to see a remake of this game. So, yeah, that's my number 5 choice. My number 4 choice is going to be Dead Rising 2. Now, I like Dead Rising 2. I think it's a decent game, but this just isn't as good as Dead Rising 1, you know. And it's interesting because with the Dead Rising series, pretty much this used to be my favorite in the series. I did like Dead Rising 1 back in the day, but I think I was of the opinion and the mindset that Dead Rising 2 is my favorite because I played it more than the first one growing up, because the Dead Rising 1 scared me more and it was a lot harder for me at the time. But as time went on, as I've gotten older and played this and the first one a lot more, I've grown to prefer the first one and like that one the most. And whereas this, I don't hate it. It doesn't age poorly. I just think it's a decent game, but I just think it could have been so much better, and I think there's a lot of things they could have did with this to where it would have been better than the first one, because I feel like Dead Rising 2, it's a decent game, but it just isn't as good as Dead Rising 1, you know. And one of the reasons I want to see this get a remake is this is one of those games that when you see the original concept art and when you see what they had in mind originally, it looks so much better than what we got. You know, unlike Dead Rising 1, where you look at the beta, it looked cool, but the final looked way better. But with Dead Rising 2, you look at the beta, and then you look at what we got, and the beta looks so much better than the final game, you know? Like, originally, the first version of Dead Rising 2 was using the MT Framework engine, Dead Rising 1's engine, and it looked so much better. From Chuck, the zombies, the setting, a few of the pictures I saw, Dead Rising 2 looked so cool in the MT Framework engine. I loved how it looked. It looked so good, high quality. The zombies looked amazing, and I really wish they would have went with that. You know, and they didn't do that. They did a different engine. So that's one of the versions they had that they never went with, which is unfortunate. And then the second version they made that was basically them using the engine of Dead Rising 2, but wasn't really the final we got, is, you know, while it did use a different engine, it did look better than what we finally got. Like, there was a lot more detail and effort put on the zombies and the textures of them. The area and setting itself looked better, like the outside of Fortune City and all the casinos and how everything just looked, and how, you know, everything looked setting-wise from the trailer and beta stuff I saw. It just looked better. It had much more detail, and just, it looked way better than what we actually got. And the reason we didn't get that version, even though it has the same engine, is this is one of the things they did with Dead Rising 2 that I think was a huge mistake, and something that they could rectify if they were to remake Dead Rising 2, is they had a choice between either 10,000 zombies on screen or having not as many zombies on screen, but you get more detail and, you know, higher quality texture work and, you know, things like that, just much higher quality. But they chose to have they chose to shove 10,000 zombies on screen, and because they did that, we instead got a bunch of downgrades, you know, because they put so many zombies on screen, like the lighting and textures and the overall quality of the game just got downgraded because they shoved so many zombies on screen. And that just isn't a good trade-off, because the next Dead Rising after and after and after, they're just going to keep upping the zombie counter more and more, so it's not really going to be impressive eventually, just like how graphics always become outdated eventually. So that just wasn't a good trade-off. It was a stupid idea, in my opinion. And another problem with them shoving 10,000 zombies on screen is it really affects gameplay. Like, unless you're up close to zombies, their AI is just completely turned off and they don't even move around. Whereas in Dead Rising 1, the zombies and zombie AI from far away would actually move around, you know, and it was nice detail. Like, when you're on top of the safe house in Dead Rising 1, if you look outside in front of the mall, there's zombies moving around that far away, and it just makes the world feel more alive, and it's just nice detail. And, you know, Dead Rising 1 zombies look so good, and the zombies in this game look terrible because they had to shove 10,000 zombies on screen, and it just downgraded the quality of them. A lot of their AI is turned off unless you go up to them. Another reason it affects gameplay is when you're using like Hail Marys or Super BFGs, when you shoot them at certain zombie crowds, it only hits certain zombies and not the ones behind them, because their AI is not turned on unless you go really close to them, because they shove 10,000 10,000 zombies on screen. So that was a horrible idea. Also, some other stuff that they could do with the Dead Rising 2 remake to improve this game is a lot of the concept art for the characters that we originally saw looked way better than what we got. Like the concept art for the twins looked so much better than what they went with. They looked more like gothic and creepy, and they had more of a DR1 look to them. They looked cool as hell. They looked more distinctive, and they just abandoned it and went with their final design where they just look more like generic clubbing girls. They should have went with their original design. Sullivan as well. I like his original design more, where it's a lot more of kind of a Wild West sheriff outfit. He's kind of fat, he's balding, he's holding like a shotgun, and he has like a bag, which I don't know what's in it, but the design looks really cool. He makes him look more like an asshole and someone who would betray you, and it looks cool and it looks more grounded, much like how DR1's art style was like grounded with how they designed characters, and Sullivan's original design looked that way as well. So I would love to see a remake of Dead Rising 2 because this is a decent game, but I just feel like it wasn't as good as the first one, and it could have been better than the first one, and it should have been better. And I think if they were to remake this and change some things and do a lot of things, they can make it way better than the first one and actually make this even better and what a sequel should be. Like, for example, what they could do is they could either use the MT framework engine with the first version and do that, or they could go with the second version where they weren't going to shove 10,000 zombies on screen. So I would say with a remake, in terms of a blueprint they could go on, they could either use the first version, which is the MT framework engine, the engine of the first game, which I would prefer, or they could use the second version where they didn't shove 10,000 zombies on screen. Use one of those versions. And some other things I think they could do for a Dead Rising 2 remake: make the Survivor AI stupid again, because I don't like that they made the Survivor AI smart in Dead Rising 2. And the reason I don't like that is because it made the game easy in terms of rescuing survivors. I actually like the stupid Survivor AI of Dead Rising 1 because it actually feels rewarding and it's challenging to rescue the survivors. Whereas Dead Rising 2, because it's easy to rescue them, it doesn't feel as fun. So I would like to see them make the Survivor AI stupid again so it's hard to rescue survivors. Some other stuff they should do: improve a lot of the characters like Rebecca and the twins, give them more development, have more quality to the game, much like how Dead Rising 1 got. Have more details in there. Have some of the areas be a little bit different, because a lot of the areas were just like copy and pasted from the first game. Have some of the areas be a little bit different. Add some of the cut psychopaths I saw in the book. Like there was one that had like a Native American look to him. Another one was like one guy who had like a golf club, one guy who had a tennis racket and stuff like that. Use a lot of the original designs for like the twins and Sullivan and stuff like that. Make the game harder, improve on the psychopaths, improve on a lot of the survivor missions, have more to the story. Just remake Dead Rising 2, but improve the game overall and fix a lot of the problems, and use the MT framework engine. That way it looks more like Dead Rising when it feels more like the first game, because this game does do a decent job of carrying a lot of DR1's ideas, but it still just looks too different compared to DR1 because of the engine change, and that kind of bothers me because a sequel should look like its predecessor. So yeah, my number 4 choice is Dead Rising 2. I would love to see a remake of this game so they could actually go with the original versions, which is either the MT framework engine or the second version that didn't shove 10,000 zombies on screen. Use one of those versions, Also, actually have a horror tone. I feel like that got lost in part 2 compared to the first one. Maybe put a cult in here, as a throwback to the first one. Like I said, stupid Survivor AI, so it's challenging to rescue them. Change or improve a lot of the areas so they're not a lot of copied areas from the first one. Improve the characters and story and make them even better. Give them the quality, because I feel like the overall characters and story, they didn't have that like high quality professional feel that Dead Rising 1 had with the story and characters, so give that to Dead Rising 2 in the remake. Use a lot of the original designs like for Sullivan and twins because they looked a lot better. I would also say add in the content from Off the Record. Put Uranus Zone in a remake of this game. Remake Case West and Case Zero 2 maybe as well, and throw them into the DR2 remake. That would be pretty cool to see. And, add Uranus Zone, stuff like that. And I think if they did all that and they either went with the MT framework engine version or the original version that didn't shove 10,000 zombies on screen, as well as everything else I mentioned, you could turn Dead Rising 2 into an even better game, and it would finally surpass the first game. And I would love to see it. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate Dead Rising 2, but at the same time, it's a decent game, and I think it could have been much better, and I think it could have been even better if they would have did certain things. And I think it would make sense for them to remake this, have KG involved like he was with the original, and if you can, the DR1 team that made Dead Rising 1, get them involved with a remake of Dead Rising 2 as well. That would be really cool to see, you know. So yeah, that's my number 4 choice, Dead Rising 2. It would be cool to see this get a remake. My number 3 choice is going to be Siphon Filter 1 for the PlayStation 1. I do like Siphon Filter 1. This is definitely a good game. I did beat this game and played it a while ago. I do enjoy the first Siphon Filter. It's a really good game on the PS1. It's a good third-person shooter. It's really fun to play. It's got really cool music. It's a good third-person shooter. It's got really cool characters, a good story, and it's a fun, you know, third-person shooter game. And I thought it was really good for the PlayStation 1. And, you know, this is definitely one of the exclusives by Sony I like, and I think they should bring this back. But I would like to see Siphon Filter 1 get a remake for the PlayStation 1. I think it would make a lot of sense to remake this game, because even though I like this game and I did enjoy it, it has some really dated aspects that they could really improve on in a remake. Like, for example, Siphon Filter 1, you can only play it with the D-pad. You can't play it with the analog sticks, and that's very dated when you go back to it because, you know, we use analog sticks now. So a remake of this game with analog stick use would be nice. Another thing they could improve on with a remake of this is some part of the gameplay where you... So there's a part of the gameplay where you go into first person and you do like first person shooting, you know, to headshot enemies or to attack enemies that have a flak jacket and hit them on other areas. I think they can improve that as well, because that's another dated aspect. When you try to go into first person with the gameplay, it's very dated because you can only use the D-pad, and on the PS1, it feels very dated and rough to use the first person gameplay. It's very dated. So that's another thing they could vastly improve in a remake. Of course, as well as like the voice acting, the graphics especially, the levels, the overall gameplay itself. I feel like they could really improve a lot of things, and I think it would be cool to bring Siphon Filter back, and I think it would make a lot of sense because they did that for Medieval, they did that for Spyro and Crash, and I think they should do it for Siphon Filter. I'd like to see the first Siphon Filter from the PlayStation 1. I'd like to see it get a remake on the new PlayStation. I think that'd be cool to see. Just a complete overhaul in terms of like visuals, you know, graphics, gameplay, voice acting, maybe add new content to it, and just enhance the game overall and fix a lot of the dated stuff, like only being able to use a D-pad where we can now have analog stick usage, fix the first-person aiming and how dated it felt, and just improve the game overall. And I think it would really be cool to see, and I think it would make a lot of sense to do a remake of Siphon Filter 1 for the PS1. I would definitely like to see it, and I think they could really enhance this game and make it, and, you know, improve on those things and really do something special with a remake of this. And I really think it should happen because this is one of Sony's exclusives from back in the day, and I think it'd make a lot of sense to bring this back since they brought their other ones back, like Medieval and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my number 3 choice, Siphon Filter 1 on the PlayStation 1. It would be really cool to see this get a remake. My number 2 choice is going to be Max Payne 1 from the PlayStation 2. Now, I loved Max Payne 1 and 2 as a kid. I enjoyed the games. Now, I don't know where I stand on Max Payne 2 nowadays. I didn't play that enough, but I did revisit Max Payne 1 nowadays, and even though I liked this game as a kid, this game just does not hold up for me nowadays. I don't really like this game anymore. It just doesn't hold up, and I just feel like it's very dated. And I think Max Payne 1 could really do with having a remake, and I would really love to see it. You know, because I liked Max Payne 1 back in the day, and it was innovative with the slow bullet time. It did have good voice acting and cool music, and it was fun back in the day when I played it, and it did have good level design and, you know, a good story, and Max Payne was a good character, but nowadays, this game just doesn't hold up, and I feel like it's very dated, and what's dated about it is the gameplay. The gameplay in this game is very dated. It's just, the gameplay is just dated. The way it feels and how you move and shoot and stuff, just the gameplay overall is very dated in this game, and it just hasn't aged that well, and gameplay is the big problem with it. It just feels very rough, and it just, this game is in desperate need of a remake, and I would like to see Max Payne 1 definitely get a remake because I definitely think it needs it and it could benefit great from it. Because I still, Max Payne 3, I would say, still holds up. I played that and played it even more over the years, and I definitely enjoy Max Payne 3. I think that's the best one. Love the gameplay in it. The story's amazing. The voice acting's great. Max Payne 3 is awesome. It has really good gameplay, and it definitely has the best. It ages the best in terms of modern times. Max Payne 3 is great, really challenging, and I would love to see them do a remake of Max Payne 1 for the PlayStation 2. I'd love to see them remake this Max Payne 1 game and give it the Max Payne 3 gameplay, but it would be even better because it would be, of course, newer than Max Payne 3. So yeah, that's my number 2 choice, Max Payne 1 for PS2. Liked this game as a kid, but it doesn't hold up, and it's very dated gameplay-wise, and I think they could really improve this by doing a remake of Max Payne 1 and have it play like Max Payne 3 and look and feel and just play like Max Payne 3, and it would be just amazing, and I would love to see that, and it would really improve this game, and I'd really be able to get into it. So that's something I would definitely like to see because this just doesn't hold up, and I think it definitely needs a remake. It would be awesome to see. So my number 1 choice is going to be Dynasty Warriors 2. Now, I love the Warriors games. I really, really do. I like Dynasty Warriors 3, Dynasty Warriors 4, Dynasty Warriors 5. I even like 6, even though a lot of people hated that. I liked 7. I liked a lot of the Warriors games. I like some of the Samurai Warriors games. I like a lot of the Warriors Orochi games. I'm a big fan of the Warriors games that Koei has made. I grew up on them, but I never played this game back in the day. Only a little bit at someone's house, but it wasn't for very long. But I did, play Dynasty Warriors 2 and buy it in recent years. And to be honest, as much as I love the Warriors games, and I do respect Dynasty Warriors 2 because it was the first Dynasty Warriors was a fighting game. Dynasty Warriors 2 was the first hack and slash game. So it really set the tone for the series, and I respect it for that. But this game ages very poorly, and it just doesn't hold up, and it's aged very badly. And I tried to give this game a shot and play Dynasty Warriors 2 nowadays after checking it out, in recent times, and I just can't get into this game. I can't have fun with it. I just find it boring because it just ages so poorly because Dynasty Warriors improved so much on 2, and the formula got so much better later on, and the other games were so much better that this just really ages bad, and it pales in comparison. And while it's respectable for the groundwork it laid, Dynasty Warriors 2 just doesn't really hold up. It ages badly, and I think this game desperately needs a remake, and it would make this bad game into a really good game. And I would love to see Dynasty Warriors 2 get a remake because I couldn't get into it because it just aged poorly. And I think why it aged poorly is like the gameplay and game itself is just very bare bones compared to the later games. There's only 4 attacks. You can't get any weapons from my knowledge. You can't get any more than 4 attacks, so you only get 1 charge attack with each 4 attack. There's no voice acting in any of the gameplay, only I think cutscenes. You can only read text, the gameplay itself and just the game itself just feels so bare bones from the hack and slash combat with only 4 attacks and only having 1 charge attack each for those 4 attacks, and no voice acting in the gameplay. The game itself just feels very bare bones and very dated compared to the later games and what the later games were able to do by improving the overall gameplay and scope with the cast of characters, the visuals of the game, the graphic style, the campaigns, the weapons, the hack and slash gameplay. I just feel like the later games did way more to improve on this. I will say one thing that Dynasty Warriors 2 did do better than the later ones is it had better optimization. The optimization for this is pretty impressive. It runs pretty smoothly. It's really cool. But I would love to see a remake of Dynasty Warriors 2. I think it desperately needs it. I would love to see them remake Dynasty Warriors 2, make it better, actually make it a good game. That way it doesn't feel bare bones or dated, because like I said, I respect this game, but it's very dated and bare bones now, and it just doesn't hold up. I can't get into this game, and I think this needs a remix. So yeah, my number 1 choice is Dynasty Warriors 2 for the PlayStation 2. I think this should get a remake, and I think it would make a lot of sense because they could really improve this game, enhance it, make it better, add in a lot of the stuff they added in the later Warriors games, and just make it a lot better, and it would just hold up a lot more nowadays if they would remake Dynasty Warriors 2, enhance the game, and just, make the game better overall. That way it doesn't feel bare bones or dated, because this is a bare bones and dated game and definitely is in desperate need of an overhaul remake, and I would definitely like to see it. So that's it overall for my 5 video games that I would like to see get a remake of. I do have a few honorable mentions I will mention real quick. Up first is going to be Resident Evil 6. So, I don't want to see a remake of this as much as 5. Because, if they remade RE5 and it did well, they'd probably remake this, much like how they remade 2, it did well as they did 3. But this is an honorable mention. Resident Evil 6, I liked it back in the day, but this doesn't hold up anymore. But I would like to see Resident Evil 6 get a remake. I think that would be cool, because this is a very hated game and it disappointed a lot of people. And I think if they remade Resident Evil 6 and got Shinji Mikami involved, I would even say get Hideki Kamiya involved as well, because it's much more of a bigger project than RE5. You get those two guys involved and some other talented people, maybe they did the RE2 remake. I think they should remake Resident Evil 6 and turn a really bad game into a really good game. Go to the approach of RE5, like I said, where it's a lot more like RE4 with its magic and what made that game work, and it's a lot more like Evil Within and Dead Space and how they were able to build off RE4. Or you could just make it more like RE2 Remake and make it more like a survival horror game, with the campaigns, maybe make them single player, improve the gameplay, improve the setting, make it more horror, make it more like 4 with its magic, or make it more like RE2 Remake. I'm not quite sure what they could do with a remake of this, but yeah, that's an honorable mention. It'd be interesting to see them try to remake Resident Evil 6, get like maybe Shinji and Hideki Kamiya involved, and, turn a really bad game into a really good game, because it's cool to see good games get remakes, but it would be nice to see some bad games get remakes, because it's a chance for them to improve. So, yeah, it'd be cool to see this get a remake. Make a game that was really bad into a really good game. Either make it more like RE4, or even make it like RE2 and RE3 Remake. It'd be cool to see. The next honorable mention is Dynasty Warrior 6. I think it would be cool to see a remake of this game. It's not something I would really want to see, which is why it's an honorable mention, and I do think it's still a fun game. But it would be cool to see a remake of this, because this game disappointed a lot of people, and I feel like they could address and improve a lot of things. Like if they remade Dynasty Warrior 6, they could flesh out and improve the Rinbu system, add in all the cut characters, add new characters, which DW6 didn't do, give everybody a campaign, actually. I kind of don't mind the clones, but, maybe have an option to let people use some of the original weapons for certain characters, have more outfits, things like that. And it'd be cool to see. I still like this game. It's not something I would want to see as much as these other ones, which is why it's a honorable mention. But it would be cool to see this get a remake, because they could address all the criticisms and issues people had with this one. And then my last honorable mention, well, it's going to be like 2 honorable mentions, but I don't own the other one. So this will be my last 2 honorable mentions. True Crime Streets of LA and True Crime Streets of New York. I remember liking True Crime Streets of New York back in the day, but I haven't played it in a long time, and I don't know if it's dated poorly or not. Maybe that could just be a remastered game. I don't know. But I'm going to throw that in there and just have it be an honorable mention, because I'm just, I'm not really sure if I still like that game or not. I haven't played it in a long time, and I don't know if it needs a remake, but I'll just throw it in there. So yeah, True Crime Streets of LA, True Crime Streets of New York. I think it would make sense to do a remake of those games and to do new versions of them. It would bring more sandbox GTA type games back into the world. It would bring back interest for the true crime games. It would give Rockstar some competitions. They can actually start doing more games again, because they've really fell off over the years. Maybe it could even gauge interest to do a new Sleeping Dogs, because Sleeping Dogs was supposed to be a true crime game, but it became its own thing. So maybe they could do like a sequel to Sleeping Dogs if there's more interest for true crime, or maybe they could do a crossover with True Crime and Sleeping Dogs. I don't know, and then when it comes to like True Crime Streets of LA, this is it's an game for me. I don't hate True Crime Streets of LA. I thought it was just an okay game. I didn't love it, but it was okay. I did beat it. I don't know. I didn't like this as much as Streets of New York. I wasn't a big fan of the main character and some of his dialogue, and there really wasn't much gun variety from what I remember. Just the 2 pistols you could use. It had some good music. It was cool because it was like, a cop version of GTA. But I don't know. This would be an honorable mention too, because I didn't love this game, and I don't know if a remake would make me love this game. or improve my issues with it, but I'll have it as an honorable mention. True Crime Streets of LA and True Crime Streets of New York, those are the last two honorable mentions. You know, it'd be cool to see them get remakes. I think it would be interesting. I'd like to see what they would do with it and like do new versions of them. I'd like to see it. It'd be cool to see. So yeah, those are my last two honorable mentions. Another thing they could do if they remade True Crime Streets of New York is they can improve the bugs and glitches because like the original version of that game, from my knowledge, I was reading reviews. Apparently, it had bugs and glitches. So yeah, that's it. That's it for my part of 5 video games I wanted to see get a remake with me and Acid Roots Wired. Let us know what video games you would like to see get a remake. Peace.